Welcome to Cigar Garage. This is Doc. And today, as you can see, I'm smoking my usual Mark Twain, Connecticut, Equatorial Connecticut, with Nicaraguan fillers. Beautiful cigar, one of my favorites, as you know. And if you gave it a try yet, put it down in the comments, would you? Let me know. If you have a Connecticut that you really like, put it down. I may try it myself, just like you may try some of these. But this isn't about a cigar review today. It's about another question. And again, it was a religious question, well, sort of religious, sort of politics. But first, I want to ask you to give me a thumbs up and subscribe so that I can continue to do this. As you can see, I don't edit it. I don't things like that. I have a lot of fun doing it, hopefully to meet you and to have discussions. We agree to disagree here. So anything you want to say it. Just be kind, okay? I don't call you names. You don't call me names, that kind of thing, you know. But if you disagree, just say I disagree totally or whatever. That's fine. That's fine. You have a right to do that. And in fact, it could even cause a discussion, nice discussion. We'll talk about it. Anyway, today's video, though, I have a disclaimer. If you're squeamish, or if you can't handle some gross stuff, and it's gross, it's about prisons, and it's not about sex. It's about, though, it's not that part of prisons, but it's about prisons in China. You may not want to look at this any further, but give me a thumbs up and a subscription if you would, and then maybe another time you could, if you feel like it, you could look at this. But the disclaimer I put out here because it is some really, really gross stuff. I read a book about it, and I also know firsthand. I had spoke about what we did for the Lord, and I always said that we were like the CIA of Christians. And because we did these things, the FBI at one point wanted to question me. I'm a criminal justice specialist. I guess they didn't even know that. They don't do a lot of research, and they don't do it very well. They need a lot more training, believe me. But anyway, we used to smuggle pages of the Bible into the Red China, into Soviet Russia. And I personally did not go to those countries. I did go to Israel. And I was smuggled in Israel to certain places, and finally met with the Sanhedrin and the heads of the religion, the Orthodox religion in Israel, and was questioned about Jesus Christ and what we believe and what we're teaching, things like that. Had nothing to do with politics. I can tell anybody this story. It's no big deal. But we did have to be blindfolded and taken, because if they're caught talking to us about Christianity like that, they could be cast out. They could be stoned to death. They could have problems in their religious communities. So that I did that. But I want to tell you about a few of the other ministers that we were involved with. And this one story is about Red China. There was a great man in China, a Christian, who for 17 years was tortured for Christ. There's books about him. And I mean severely tortured for 17 years in the prisons of China. And his name is, and I'm sure he's not alive now. I don't know for sure, but whether he is, but I doubt it very much, because this was a while ago. This was in the 1980s. His name was Hua Mingdao. And Hua Mingdao was a tremendous preacher. Wound up having one of the biggest churches in China. A lot of them underground, especially when the communists came in, Red China and all that. But the story I have today is about the prison system in China. They do have prisons, but they're not like ours. Most of their prisons are nothing but a guarded fence up around a slum, and you're on your own. You get a handful of rice and a bowl of water a day, 24 hours. A lot of people starve to death, die of dysentery, things like that in their prisons. But there is part of their prison system that's even beyond that. You want to hear, you see on television some of these worst prison systems that you ever seen and stuff like that? Well, let me tell you a little story, which is true. There's books out about it, but I'm going to just tell you the story. And this is, if Again, the disclaimer is a lot of gross stuff, so you could turn it off right here if you can't handle stuff like that. What they did to this fella, he had a house, and they cook in their hallway in little pots. They all come out in the hallway and cook, and they have no furniture, just mats to sleep on in the house. They're just small little rooms, like, and that's their home, and they have families in there, but they all just lay on mats, sit on mats. Well, this family, this fella, had a couch, and the couch had holes in it and everything, but it was an old couch, so he dragged it up there and put it in his living room, so he had a couch to sit on, as old and torn up as it was. And he had one chair, and I believe he found something he was using as a little table. I don't even think it was a table, but he was using it as a table. The only 3 pieces of furniture he had in the entire house. Well, when the communists marched through the streets, they were going house to house, and they were pulling out people who they believed didn't follow them or weren't believers. You know how it is. You don't believe in them, they come and they get you. Well, they came to his apartment, and they saw this old torn up couch. And they told him, he said, how dare you, when your neighbors are living the way they're living, and you're sitting here living in a lap of luxury. He had an old torn up couch. That's all he had, and a wooden chair. But he was living, because of that, he was in a lap. They said he was in a lap of luxury. How dare him live in a lap of luxury when, his neighbors didn't have that. That's all the furniture he had. They took his couch, and there was the apartments. Their apartments are very open, and there was a courtyard. He was up, I forget what story. I thought he said around 6 stories high or something, 5 or 6 stories. He was quite high in a building, and they took the couch and threw it over and smashed it to pieces on the bottom, took the chair, threw that over, smashed it to pieces, and they arrested him for living in a lap of luxury when there's others weren't, and they sent him to what they called a reconditioning school. Well, I'll tell you what the school was and how he survived it. They find a land. Now, they don't have buildings that are prisons in some areas of China. This is outside in the outskirts. They took them way out in the outskirts, where they knew that if they ran away, they would die. They'd never get to civilization where they were. They take them way out. And China is very, very large. Even with all the people they have, there's a lot of barren land, and they take them way out where they could never make it back. Then they get excavators. They dig a big hole. Now, it's a hole like you would put in the ground to build a building in New York City, a city like New York, a big skyscraper, a big hole in the ground. And then there's one way in and one way out of that hole. And you go down, when you're a prisoner, you go down into that hole. This is where you go, okay? And there's no cells, no building, no nothing. It's a hole in the ground, dirt. And you have to take a shovel, and the more prisoners that go there, the more holes they have. But the more prisoners have to do this. What they do is they let you dig with a little hand shovel a place to sleep. So you go to the wall of this hole, and you dig a place to sleep out of the wall. Now, they have cave-ins on people and everything at times. But this was, when he got there, it was winter. It was very, very hard. So little by little, inch by inch, they had to dig out a place for him to sleep. And they sleep in the dirt in a hole in the wall. That's where they sleep. They don't get blankets, pillows, nothing like that. In the beginning, they got a handful of rice and a bowl of water. As time went on, they have them working in the field for no reason, breaking rocks, moving rocks, sometimes moving them from there today to there, and tomorrow moving them back, that kind of thing. And they would come back so tired. Well, at this point in time, obviously, there's dysentery. The water they give them is dirty. They drink in dirty water. Dysentery. They're going to the bathroom in the middle, in the dirt, where they're living. And they're burying it in the middle, and after a while it gets so contaminated with human feces and urine. But this is the way they live. A lot of deaths. A lot of these guys never make it. They don't even make it that long. So, how do they survive? Well, after a while, rice was running out. So what they were doing, and the only rice they had was given to the guards. Now the whole top is lined with guards. So they say, well, why don't they just escape or try? Well, they can't because they just get shot. The minute they go past the line, there's a certain line there, you know, like I said, one way in, one way out. You go past that line, you're dead. Now you can go anywhere you want. You can crap in the middle and bury it or whatever, but you can't go past that line. You go past that line, boom, one of the guards up top shoots you. Okay, and they kill you. And there's plenty of guards to go around there. But the guards need food. So the guards are now, at this point in his life, he had a book, he wrote this, and it's a true story. I read about it, but I verified it through the ministry. These things are actually occur. So if you think you want to go to China, go ahead. Anyway, so what they did was, his job was actually the bags, when the rice came in, to divvy it up into portions and all that, and then they give it to they hand it out to the guards. If he took even a pinch of flakes, he would be beaten to death. Not just shot, beaten to death, literally tortured to death for just a couple of grains of rice, because they needed every grain of rice for the guards. So what did they do? Some of them just starved to death and died. But others, I don't know how smart it was, or whether it's a little smarter. You may say they were a little smarter, or they came up with a better idea. It's actually something they've done before, and I guess they knew about it. But what they would do is they would get in with the guards that they work with. And if the guard was decent, if he was a good person, and he didn't want to see these people die like that, what they would do is they would take his feces. That's right. That's why I'm talking about gross. It's gross. They would take his poop. He would allow them to have his poop. And they would eat that poop and get any of the vitamins, whatever's left over in it. And it's very little, almost none. But there is some there for them. And there's roughage, at least, in a lot of it, because they're living on rice and stuff like that. And some even grasses, stuff like that. They go into it. But there is some, and it kept them alive a little bit longer. Another thing it did was fill their stomachs. Very gross, but it filled their stomachs. Now, how did they even do it? They said at first, he was saying you'd throw up, you vomit, you can't even take the smell, the stench. He says, but after a while, when your life is on the line, you keep trying it and you keep doing it. And they tell you to just keep doing it until there comes a point in time you really don't even smell it. You don't taste it, you don't smell it, and it fills your stomach and you don't throw up. And if you can get to that point, some guys couldn't. They had to quit and they wound up dying of starvation. But the ones who could get to that point where they can actually get used to this gross thing, they did live a little bit longer. And they said that the reason being, too, wasn't as much nutrients, but the fact that that starving feeling in their stomach was gone, because they had a full stomach. And I think you can understand why that would be better than not having it at all. Though, personally, I'd be a goner. But anyway, and I know you would probably be too. But this is how they survive in these prisons in China. Okay, these outward prisons. There's a name for them. I forget the name they used. But they're basically holes in the ground. You dig in the side. One time they were talking about it was raining, and the mudslides came, and they had it all come out in the middle in the ice cold rain, and people got pneumonia and everything else. But the ones who did survive had to redig their bed hole, that kind of thing. Every great once in a while, they'd get some rice, few and far between. They wouldn't have to do that. They'd get a handful of rice and some dirty water to drink. But for the most part, they had to live on the guards' feces, if the guard was decent enough to give it to them. And they did say that some guards even had tears in their eyes. They didn't like what they were seeing, but if they would be killed. If they didn't do their job, they would be killed. See, the Chinese government's not nice. They don't play nice. They just kill you. Okay? So if you want to go to China, want to be communist, go. They make Russia look like a Sunday school class. And Russia has some of the meanest, most torturous prisons in the world. And that's what happens when you go to these countries. You may not believe it. Look it up. Do the research. I forget the name of the book, or I would definitely give you the name of this book. I'm going to have to research it myself again. It was 1980s. I read it in the 90s. In fact, I learned about it, I guess it was around 1981, 1983. I read it probably, 1996, something like that. I read about it, read the book, and I was shocked. But anyway, that's a story. So if you don't want to go to prison in China, that's for sure. But anyway, I hope it didn't gross you out too much. It's a true story. Some of these things are real, and I told you, we're going to get real sometimes here. Got some stories for you. But give me a thumbs up, subscribe. God bless you. See you next time. Tell me what cigar you're smoking while we're talking. This is Doc. God bless. Bye-bye.